Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to unpack a super specific, highly practical set of ancient Talmudic guidelines. We're looking at the exact step-by-step methods for preparing liver and the underlying legal framework that makes those methods absolutely necessary. We're going to tackle this with a grounded, analytical approach, examining exactly how ancient dietary laws bump right up against the physical, biological realities of anatomy. By the end of this, you're going to see how ancient scholars completely bridge the gap between abstract, theoretical law and the literal, everyday mechanics of the kitchen. We'll be looking at how gravity, fire, and highly specific knife work are used as practical engineering solutions to navigate some really complex dietary restrictions.
Here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with Section 1, the prohibition of blood. Then, Section 2, the anatomy of a liver. Section 3, a Shabbat case study. Section 4, rules for proper preparation. And we'll wrap up with Section 5, contrasting with the spleen.
Okay, let's dive into this with Section 1, the prohibition of blood.
At the very core of this entire discussion is a strict, unconditional Torah law. This foundational law absolutely prohibits the consumption of blood. Now, to really grasp the gravity of the kitchen rules we're about to explore, we have to recognize that in the ancient world, eating blood was a massive infraction. Preparing meat wasn't just, a matter of culinary preference, it was a high-stakes legal and moral endeavor. If there's prohibited blood in the meat, it renders the whole thing entirely forbidden to eat, period. This overarching, Torah-level legal framework sets the stage for every single practical decision we're going to talk about today. The law itself is crystal clear and totally unbending, but as you'll see, taking a broad legal principle and applying it to messy physical anatomy requires intense precision.
Moving right along to Section 2, the anatomy of a liver.
The liver is, essentially, an organ completely defined by its blood content. So to solve the problem of eating liver without violating that fundamental Torah law we just talked about, the ancient texts draw a sharp line based purely on physics and anatomy. On one side, we have blood absorbed in flesh. Think of the physical texture of a liver. It acts almost exactly like a sponge. The natural blood that is suffused and absorbed right into the meat of the liver itself is actually permitted. But, and here is the catch, on the other side we have blood collected in arteries. The blood that pools or collects inside the distinct tubular blood vessels, those internal arteries running all through the liver, that blood remains strictly prohibited. This is the absolute crux of the legal distinction, differentiating between what's naturally absorbed in the spongy flesh and what's physically trapped inside distinct internal vessels.
Let's look at how this plays out in real life in Section 3, a Shabbat case study.
The text recounts a really fascinating story about a prominent scholar, Rababar Rahuna, who is visiting the home of another scholar for Shabbat. Upon arriving, he finds a remarkably lavish dinner. His hosts have prepared this enormous quantity of exceptionally fine bread, kneaded in rich oil and sweet honey. Rababar Rahuna actually asks if they made all this simply because they knew a distinguished guest was coming. And the hosts reply beautifully. They ask him, "Are you more distinguished than Shabbat?" They were simply honoring the sacred day with a grand feast. But it's in this exact setting that a pretty stark irony emerges. These hosts went to incredible, meticulous lengths to bake elaborate bread, yet, as they sit down for the main course, they've potentially made a severe baseline error in dietary law. Right in the middle of this festive meal, Rababar Rahuna finds a piece of served liver on his plate. He looks closely at it, and he literally spots a distinct artery still suffused with trapped blood. He immediately calls it out, asking, "Why do you do this? Although the blood absorbed in the liver is permitted, that which is collected in the blood vessels is prohibited." Notice how he anchors his reaction tightly to that exact legal analysis we just established. It's a tense moment, right? A total collision between this beautiful, festive atmosphere and strict legal reality. The hosts realize their mistake right there at the dinner table, and they ask him what they actually should have done to prepare the meat correctly.
Which brings us perfectly to Section 4, rules for proper preparation. So what is the practical fix? How do you physically remove that prohibited blood from the vessels? The text gives us a rigorous three-step physical procedure. First, you absolutely must tear the liver lengthwise and widthwise. Why both directions? Well, tearing it in a crisscross pattern ensures that you rupture every single crossing artery in that vascular network. You can't just cook it whole. You have to physically dismantle the internal plumbing. Second, you have to position the liver with that tear facing downward. Third, you place it directly on the fire to roast. Just think about the literal physics happening in the kitchen here. By facing the tear downward, you make sure the pathways are open. You're using gravity combined with the drawing heat of the fire to physically force that trapped liquid to drain entirely out of those internal vessels. It is a brilliant, totally practical engineering solution to a complex anatomical restriction.
Finally, let's test this logic in Section 5, contrasting with the splee.
So, you might be wondering, does this stringent requirement of tearing an organ lengthwise and widthwise apply to all inner organs? Do we have to use these exact kitchen mechanics for everything we roast? Well, testing this question against a totally different organ proves the underlying anatomical logic of the law. And this brilliantly illustrates the exactness of the text. When we compare the liver to the spleen, we see a really distinct contrast. That whole requirement to tear an organ open, it only applies to the liver, because the liver's anatomy is literally defined by a dense network of blood vessels and arteries that trap prohibited blood. The spleen, on the other hand, doesn't require this tearing process at all. Why? Because legally and anatomically, the text defines the spleen as an organ composed mostly of fat, not of blood-trapping vessels. Think about the physics again. If the spleen is made of fat rather than vascular vessels, what happens when you roast it over a fire? The fat simply renders and melts away. It doesn't trap prohibited blood inside tiny tubes. The rule is strictly tied to the specific problem of draining blood vessels.
The text actually backs up this anatomical distinction with a very specific historical anecdote. It notes that the attendants of another prominent scholar, Shmuel, would prepare a dish specifically made of spleens for him on the days he underwent medical bloodletting. This is such a fascinating detail. Ancient medicine often prescribed eating organ meats after blood loss to aid in recovery, basically what we'd recognize today as an iron supplement. The fact that Shmuel could safely eat a whole dish of spleens for medicinal recovery without needing those intense, crisscrossing tearing mechanics required for the liver highlights the practical daily reality of these laws. It proves that ancient kitchen practices were highly attuned to the specific biological makeup of every single ingredient.
So, let's quickly summarize these concrete dinner table applications so you have a totally clear picture of how this ancient text translates into physical practice. Remember, this text wasn't just, debating abstract philosophy. It was providing a highly mechanical kitchen manual based entirely on biological reality. The core issue is that liver arteries require draining to avoid a Torah-level prohibition against consuming blood. The solution is mechanical. Tear the organ both lengthwise and widthwise to rupture the network, and roast it face down to let gravity and heat do the work. And this process is scientifically targeted. Organs like the spleen are totally exempt due to their fat composition rather than a vascular structure.
We've seen how a massive, abstract legal prohibition against eating blood was distilled all the way down into the precise physical angles of slicing and roasting an organ over a fire. It leaves us with this incredible intersection of ancient law, human anatomy, and everyday kitchen mechanics. Take a moment to think about that. How do these ancient anatomical distinctions reshape your understanding of exactness in modern culinary practice? Thank you so much for joining me today, and keep exploring the incredible structure behind these ancient texts.